Howdy and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about night vision equipment, more specifically than that, my Armasite Sidekick 640, and more specifically than that, the battery packs that I use to keep it running. I had a question from one of my viewers, his name is King IBN or LBN Dragon, on my last night vision video, asking which battery pack is the best, which is a silly question. I don't know you. I don't know what your budget is, and I don't know what you're doing with this equipment, so I can give you some pointers instead. I know of another channel called Mindful Hunter, and he did a video a couple of years ago called Battery Banks for Backpacking Review. That has a comprehensive guide on like the different numbers for things, on like how waterproof and dustproof they are. If you want to see a bunch of numbers, the general gist of what you're looking for in these kind of things, that's a great video to go for. However, it's not quite what we're talking about. All the battery banks that he talks about in that video are very large, and you're not going to be able to fit them in a battery bank pouch on the back of a helmet. Both of these here are my choices of what I use. They have some similarities and some big differences. This one's from Energizer, this one's from a company called Cell Helmet. They're both Chinese garbage. They're both 10,000 milliamp hours, which is the minimum that I would say that you should use. And they're both designed to fit into a pocket in your shorts or your pants. However, because of that size, they're able to fit in here. Obviously, they're two different dimensions. You have long and thin, and short and fat. Very chody. Both of them will squeeze in the back of this, and I'll show you that in a second. The biggest issue with these kind of things and putting them in a helmet is actually something that a lot of people don't consider, which is how much light these put out. Which is the point of the video, to talk about something that I don't see a lot of other people bring up when it comes to purchasing these for the use of night vision. If I take my battery bank and pick it up, I can press this button here, and you'll see that it lights up 97%. Same with this one. I press the button on the bottom, and it lights up. And it has a little bit of spillage coming out of the side here. Let me show you what these actually look like in the dark. To the naked eye, very bright. You see that one that's shining the camera right now? That is way brighter than the 97 on the Energizer, and you can see the light spilling out of the side too, like a lot of it. Your light pollution is definitely something that you need to be worried about while you're buying battery banks to put in the back here. Your head with the intention of staying hidden in the dark. I only use my Cell Helmet one as a backup for the Energizer one when this one's running low. And the reason why is because this number here is so much dimmer than this indicator here. I've done a lot of stuff with the Energizer. When I shot my last night vision video, this is the one that I was using when I go to my classes, and yes, I do use this equipment with professionals. This is the battery pack that I'm running. However, as much yapping as I do about these, I actually haven't tested them side by side to see which one is better for me. Outside of dimensional problems, maybe, and the amount of light they push out, they are basically identical. In my opinion, it's important to cover up how much light is actually coming out of these guys. And to do that, I actually have this right here. It's actually a cover for goggles that I went ahead and just zip-tied one side closed to. I just take the battery packs, drop them inside of here, and then push this in the back of my pouch. How much of an effect does that have? Let me show you. Beginning with the Energizer, you'll see how much this bag mitigates that light. Let's go ahead and turn the light off here. Slipping the bag on. Even though you can see through the covering I have on there, it definitely mitigates it a lot over what it was on the outside. Under night vision though, does that matter? I'm not sure. Let's go ahead and try our Cell Helmet for the same reason. Here we are, light off, and over the bag. And you can see that this is so bright that you can actually make out all the dots almost as easily inside as you can outside. And you turn it to the side, you can still see all the light pouring out too. So maybe not the best mitigation, but at least to the naked eye, enough that it should matter a little bit. But I'm not sure how much. Some of you might be asking, why don't I just take the battery pack, flip it around, and then drop it into the helmet? And the super simple answer is because I want myself or somebody else to be able to easily tell me how much battery life I have left without tearing the entire helmet apart. The plan is, once I figure out how much light is emitting out of this, if it's enough that I'm still bothered by it, I might take the battery pack, flip it around, and put it up against the helmet, because there's no other option. But the only way to find out for sure is to go out and test. So here's the plan. I'm going to take both of these battery packs one at a time. I'm going to install them in the back of this pouch. We're going to take it out in the dark. We're going to look at it with the naked eye, and we're going to look at it with night vision, specifically that PVS 14 right there, and we're going to see how much of an effect these have in certain conditions, starting right here in my garage. So let's go ahead, move forward, and see what results we get. The first test here is going to be what it would look like if you were in my house, sitting in the dark, watching me LARP, thinking that I can't see when I have night vision and thermals going at the same time. I'm actually pretty surprised by how little the Cell Helmet showed up with the amount of light spillage coming out of the side, but for better or for worse, this is what I got. Test number 2 is under night vision with both of the battery banks uncovered, and you can really see how much light is spilling out of the side of my Cell Helmet there. It's, especially when I turn my head sideways, it's quite a bit. Test number 3 is exactly the same as test number 2, except both of the battery banks are now covered with my goggles covering or protector. And you can see how the cell helmet's ambient light has basically disappeared. However, the Energizer one is almost identical. It's actually pretty much the same, and it confused me enough that I went ahead and did a little bit of testing. So I took it back to the table, and I went ahead and slid the cover on and off of the Energizer battery pack here, and I was really surprised at how it does absolutely nothing for you, especially when you compare it to naked eye testing. Now, obviously, some of you guys are going to be looking at this footage I just showed you of those LEDs that are on the back of my head, not the front of my face, and tell me about how stupid it is. After all, you can see right now it looks like the splash that's coming off of my Armasite is way brighter than the LEDs that I'm worried about on the back of my head, and you'd be right. And you wouldn't be seeing the LEDs on the back of my head unless you're behind me, like hiding in that corner over there for some reason, and I walk past you. And if I'm looking directly at you, you're not going to be seeing the back of my head, you'll be seeing something like this. But that doesn't tell the whole story, so we're going to go out somewhere that's a little bit further where there's not as much ambient light like there is here, and we're going to see how much of a difference it makes. So let's head that way and see what happens. Deer sure are cool, aren't they? Moving forward, we're going to be doing test number 4, which is the cell helmet battery pack, uncovered. We're not going to be using coverings for the remainder of this video because you've seen how much of an effect it has at about 15 feet. We're going to be going out way further than that, so it's not really that useful. Now, one thing I want you to pay attention to when you're watching this footage right here is how the grainage that's coming through the PVS-14 from it trying to auto-gate and pick up light in this pretty dark night under this pretty dark condition that I'm walking around in this particular day, that the battery indicator light that I was worried about basically turns into the same size and brightness as the grainage that is naturally generated by the PVS-14. And a matter of fact, way worse than that is just the spillage coming out of the front of my Armasite Sidekick as I'm looking around. And last but certainly not least is going to be the Energizer battery, test number 5. Now, compared to indoors, you can see that it's going to disappear here right about there. And you're going to have some trouble seeing it from this point forward. I'm not sure if that's just it sitting down further inside of the helmet than it was when it was indoors. I don't know if it's just because there was a lot of ambient light and so it was easier for the PVS-14 to auto-gate and pick it up. I don't actually know why it's so difficult to see out here in comparison. I'm going to walk it a little bit further. You can see it glowing a little bit here and there, but just like the cell helmet battery pack, it's real hard to pick up past probably 15-20 feet. Now, is that enough of a difference to make a difference to you and what you're doing? I don't know. It's enough of a difference to me that I'm going to continue covering them up, and if I can find other ways of filtering the light, I'm going to. Alright, we made it back to the bench. So, here's the big takeaways that I have for you guys. Pay attention to how much light is coming out of your battery pack. To me, it matters a lot. To you, it might not, based on the footage that you've seen. Apparently, it matters way more indoors than it does outdoors, but it's still something to consider. If you have a way of mitigating how much light is coming out, do it. Or try to buy battery packs that don't emit a bunch of light to begin with, so you don't have a problem. I thought that this light here was going to be a huge issue, and it ended up not being a big issue because it just sits back behind my counterweight just perfectly, so it's not really a problem that I have to deal with. You would think that it would spill out more with it looking like that, but apparently not. I might end up using this battery pack more often than the Energizer one simply because it's really easy to mitigate how much light's coming out with this. I might look into some other options, and if you guys have any suggestions, I'd love to try them. Obviously, you have a big problem with how much light is coming out of your optical devices in the front. I know that they make these little eye cup things to help out. However, when you do that, you lose the ability to see ambient light around you because a lot of the times you don't actually need night vision and you're better off just turning it off. But you're still going to be having light coming out of the back because it's plugged in. Pay attention to what you're doing, right? If you're like me, just walking around looking at animals, doing classes where you shoot in the dark, whatever, sometimes that extra light is actually really nice, especially when you're in a group setting. You might want just a little bit coming out of the top of your head. That way other people can spot you when you're walking around the range. But for me, using around the house or whatever, I don't want it if I don't have to have it. One final tip. I know I mentioned another video at the beginning of this video talking about battery packs, and just as a little cautionary warning, right? This is the Anchor. This is the same battery pack that he recommended at the end, and I bought one and I liked it for a long time until I had this guy plugged in, it was charging, and suddenly my connector melted both sides, the cable and the actual battery pack, and bricked this. Once you start actually using your equipment, it'll probably break. Things go wrong when you don't want them to, so it's not a bad idea to bring more than one battery pack with you when you're doing something. I like to bring a big 20,000 milliamp battery pack with me, especially if I'm doing a multi-day thing, to recharge my smaller battery packs that are sitting in the back of their phones or whatever. Have dedicated ones for dedicated equipment, have general purpose ones for general purpose equipment. But just be aware, things don't always work the way that you anticipate them working. Anyway, thank you for watching the video. Bye.